Hey everybody, Jen Hatmaker here, your host of the For the Love podcast. Welcome to the show. Today we're getting into a concept that I keep revisiting on the podcast because I'm passionate about it for a reason because it's changed my relationship with my own body. I'm what I understand about my body, how I feel in my body, how my body, I can learn to inhabit my body as a conduit of like healing and centering and processing. It's just this idea of embodiment. You've heard me talk about it quite a bit on here. It's just not anything I'd ever known. This is nothing I was ever taught. And so as a grown up, it's just been a struggle to inhabit my body in joy, in love, in gratitude. That I had literally the opposite message of that my whole life, as did probably you. And so, really feeling truly at home inside our bodies is a process, but it is possible. Um, so, today we're talking with someone who has been working as a therapist, as an embodiment expert for years. They've set new roads as a trailblazer really within their somatic field of therapy, incorporating what they've learned in their practice, their activism, their teachings. So from their own bio, Prentis is inviting us on a journey to find what it really takes to heal histories of oppression, to heal our relationships with each other and the land, and to heal our connection to our bodies. I mean, that's it. It's a tall order. This is revolutionary work that could change not just our individual lives, but it could change our communities and our cultures. Prentis Hemphill is a writer, embodiment facilitator, political organizer, therapist. They're the founder and director of the Embodiment Institute and the Black Embodiment Initiative, and we'll talk about both. For the last 10 years, Prentis has practiced and taught some somatics in social movement organizations and offered embodied practice during moments of like cultural social unrest and then even like organizational upheaval. They've taught embodied leadership with Black organizing for leadership and dignity and generative somatics, and served as the healing justice director of Black Lives Matter Global Network from 2016 to 2018. Their work and writing have appeared in the New York Times, HuffPost. Prentis is a contributor to You Are Your Best Thing, which is edited by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown. Also, Holding Change by Adrienne Marie Brown, and The Politics of Trauma by Stacey Haynes. Prentis's debut book, What It Takes to Heal, will be published by Penguin Random House this June. This conversation is right in the wheelhouse of what I am working on right now, what I am continuing to learn right now. My craving to live joyfully and presently in my own body, and then to use to operate from that space, in strength, in leadership, and in integrity. What I really love about this conversation is the way Prentis weaves this idea of sort of individual embodiment with community healing and then cultural healing. Like, yes, some of this is personal work, but it's truly realized in community, and then it is truly demonstrated in cultural healing. So, in other words, we're all in this together. And I believe that. And I've experienced that. So I think you're going to love this conversation. Please enjoy this amazing discussion. So I am delighted to welcome Prentis to the For the Love podcast. I want to think about somebody maybe who's listening and they are at ground level. They're at ground
Yeah.
zero on understanding your work, even the terminology, the language, the concepts. So, you founded the Embodiment Institute in 2021.
hmm
let's start at the ground
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
first rung of the ladder. Can you
Hmm.
talk to us about embodiment? Can you talk to us about somatics?
Yep,
Like get put some of the
yep,
language on the
yep.
table, and I'd love to build some thoughts around it.
I love that because it is like I'm kind of landing on a planet and I'm using words that people are like, this is not a word that I use. I'm not familiar with this. Um, okay, I think about it this way. Somatics is the study of um how our experiences, our traumas live in the body. It's also a story of how our bodies can be resilient. It's the study of that. So there's a lot of neuroscience, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the canon of somatics. There's also practices over time that people have learned and developed. Um, and that's what I think of as somatics. It's kind of like the official canon in a way, but
Mm,
somatics is a really rich, it's a really rich study and exploration that people have been in for decades at this point, many, many decades. Yeah, therapists and scientists and researchers. So
mm,
that's somatics. Embodiment is a word that I use more often
mm,
because embodiment to me also references back to it can include the things that are kind of in the official canon of somatics, but it's also all those practices I mentioned earlier that we can think about in our families, in our communities,
mm,
eating together, holding each other, dancing together. Embodiment is, if I were to give you a more concrete
mhm,
definition, it's two things. It's our awareness of what we have learned to do. And just to take that apart a little bit, I always use this example of brushing your teeth. You don't have to think about brushing your teeth every day. And you get up in the morning, you pretty much know how to do it. So now you can do it in text. You can do it and walk around the house. You can add complexity to it because you've done it so much. You've learned it, you've
mm,
embodied it.
mm,
I have a 2.5-year-old. She has not yet embodied the skill and the many skills of brushing her teeth. So she's learning how to make circles. She's learning how to hold the
mm,
toothbrush. There's a bunch of skills that go into it that she's learning. And at some point, she will learn them so well that she'll no longer have to think about them because
right,
they will be embodied. The
mm,
thing about embodiment is we can learn to do a whole lot of things. We learn about how to be with our emotions. We learn how to suppress certain emotions. We learn how to behave like the people in our family. We learn not to behave like the people in our family. And we embody those lessons so that they no longer require us to think about it. We just do them. So that's one aspect.
mm,
The second aspect of embodiment is um, the what we do to heal and change. So becoming more aware, but then also more kind of seated in yourself, more
mm,
embodied. I'm listening more to what my body says. I'm listening more to my sensations. I'm listening more and honoring what my body is trying to communicate with me. That's another way that we use the word embodiment. I'm
mm.
more embodied in myself. So those are some of the distinctions I would make.
This is such good and important instruction for me. I grew
Mm.
up in a environment. Well, first of all, these were not standard practices in
Yeah.
any instructive
Yeah.
scenario that I was ever in growing up, but I also grew up in a like traditional religious space. We were actually taught to distrust our bodies,
Yep.
that our bodies were not trustworthy,
Yep.
that our instincts were debased,
Yep.
that our heart is deceitful above all else, and who can
Yep.
believe it, and who can trust it, and who can understand it. And
That's
so
right. That's right.
this reversal of not just imagining that my body is my own enemy, trying
Right.
to do harm in the world,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
rather that it is my most trustworthy guide
Yeah.
and messenger and
Yeah.
protector and leader in my life has been hard work,
That's
really
right.
hard work.
That's right.
I'd like to hear you talk for a minute because one thing I really am drawn to in your particular work is, and we're going to get to in a minute, the idea of sort of collective practice
Hmm.
and then how we heal together and also
Yep.
how we heal culture and the
Yep.
world. I'm very
Yep.
interested in that. But I wonder if we
Yeah.
could start. There is also individual work too. We
Yeah.
have our individual traumas and our individual
Yeah.
stories. And so, can you talk a little bit about what some of the body-based practices are when you're just kind of here in your own skin and bones,
Yeah.
doing your own work, which, and then we'll get to some of the community stuff next.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Um, in the lineage of somatics that I come through, our very basic practices um, are one is a body scan, because
Mm,
a lot of times we have learned to listen to the outside world. We're listening for danger, or we're listening for, oh, does somebody like me? Am I accepted here? And we're tuned into the frequency of other people more than we're tuned into, oh, I came close to this person and something jumped in me, or, you know, something relaxed in me. We don't notice that as much. And
mm,
so, the first step is really giving people space and some guide to start to listen to the sensations. We call sensations the language of our bodies. It's how our bodies communicate it. We don't, obviously, our bodies also communicate in words. We're talking with words now. But our bodies are always responding to external stimuli, internal stimuli that we generate. And our bodies are doing that through sensation. So
mm,
tightening, heat, cooling, bracing, um, the kind of butterfly feeling that we get,
mm,
the tingliness. There's a constant response and there's constant communication, but we most of the time are not tuned into it, don't um, listen to it, don't think it's valuable, but it's really information about how we actually feel and how
mm,
we actually are and what we actually need in this moment. So that's why it's so important. So body scan, and I would say
mm,
centering practice. I center every day. I encourage people I work with to center. And the way we center is really trying to, we're three-dimensional beings. We talk about four dimensions really, but getting people back into their length, because we
mm,
can shrink through
mm,
shame, through doubt,
mm,
worry. We kind of take our center line off. We
mm.
shrink. Or some people prove. They're always trying to like,
Oh,
prove.
yeah.
So we try to bring people back into their actual length, and we think about it as dignity, our width,
Mm,
feeling into our width, our side to side. Can I open? Can I be known? Can I connect while also having boundaries? So I'm not connecting from a place of encroachment, but I'm connecting from my actual width. Depth, so front to back, can I feel that I come from somewhere, that I have a
mm,
history, a lineage, that I also have some experience or something I can trust and rest into. And I can meet this moment without trying to control it. I don't have to rush into the moment. I can kind of meet it from my center. And then the last dimension we talk about is kind of what you care about or your purpose. Like this question I ask a lot of the people I work with is, what is worth organizing your life around? And let
mm,
that fill your body up. Breathe
mm,
that through your body and move through your life in a way that people can almost feel what it is that you care about. It comes off
mm.
of you.
I wonder personally if there was ever a moment or a season maybe when you felt most at home, most free in your own body. And
Yeah.
if there was something to learn from that, if there was something to apply to these practices of embodiment.
I think generally the times I feel most free, and I wonder if this is true for you or for other folks listening, is when I'm in beloved community, when I'm with my
Mhm.
people and I feel
Yeah.
fully accepted and loved and I feel loving and we're eating or we're dancing or we're cracking up and falling off the couch. Um, that's when
Mm,
my body feels the absolute freest is when I'm in loving community where I can cry on somebody's shoulder and, I love somatics, I love embodiment. And I think a lot of it fundamentally is trying to point us in the direction of relationship and authenticity,
mm.
courage, and care. I think that's when we will be most embodied, is when we can live those values more.
That matters so much. There's so much research that all dovetails here to support this. I mean, even the research that, loneliness is the
Yeah,
greatest predictor of an early death and
yeah,
of disease,
yeah,
more than smoking, more
yeah,
than drinking.
yeah,
Like there's so many true streams of research crossing over right now,
That's
which
right.
tell us that beloved community is vital.
Yep.
Not just to the way that we feel in our little hearts, but literally in the way that we live in our bodies and the
Absolutely.
length to which our bodies can go and thrive. Um,
That's right.
I really am interested in hearing you talk about one of the leading projects of the Embodiment Institute is the Black Embodiment Initiative,
Yeah.
and where you're creating this unique space for the Black community to explore what is
Yeah.
possible in our lives when we are more embodied. This is important work because already, as mentioned, the intersection of justice
Hmm.
and community and embodiment and heal is already a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
You are grabbing these threads from different categories and weaving them. And but then you add the layer of racial
Yeah.
trauma, white
Yeah.
supremacy.
Yeah.
You add in these this the depth of trauma that the Black community just carries generation to generation.
That's right.
And I mean, you're that work is
Hmm.
that's a mountain to climb.
Hmm.
What have you learned about your particular practices inside the Black community, and what is promising? What do you see by way of healing?
Hmm. I mean, absolutely. In some context, it's like we have so many practices, I think, as Black people throughout the diaspora and Black people in the United States. There's so much creation and culture,
Mm-hmm.
creativity, resilience, all these things that we talk about. And I think there has been uh, commodification of those things to such a degree that they no longer feed our community, feed our sense of connection and
Mm-hmm.
of beauty and justice in the way that they once could. They're kind of, they're given away in a
Mm-hmm.
particular way. But I think the technology of our culture is as brilliant as it's ever been. I think a lot of the work is how do we apply the things that we know, the songs that we know, the dances that we know? How do we apply them to our own restoration and regeneration? Um, is a big question that I have. What I've learned through doing work in with my folks, with Black people, is that there is a tremendous historical legacy that lives in our relationships, it lives in our bodies. There is, and it's also that we haven't felt, in large part, I'm speaking very generally, that there has been the time, space, and resource
Mm-hmm.
to heal from the things that have happened to us generationally because
Mm-hmm.
so many things have persisted.
That's
So
right.
how can you actually do the healing work in a
Right.
way
They're
that's
not in the
a
rearview mirror.
luxury?
They're
Right,
current.
exactly. So, it's been really important for me to carve out these spaces, these kind of liberated zones
Yeah.
where we can experience something that's almost out of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's off of this timeline. It's like, can we step aside and find each other in some other timeless space where we're already, well, my teacher says, we're already all right. We're already whole.
Good.
And I found in that space that so much can move when we hold each other, when we feel
Mm.
safe, we don't have to look over our shoulders to do that, when
Mm.
our grief is welcome, and
Mm.
when our cultural technology, the brilliance of what we do, is applied to the purpose that we need. Like, we need a song now. We need a dance now. And we
Mm.
bring that forth for us. There's so much, so much, so much healing in that. So it's been a great joy to and healing for me to
Mm.
explore in that space, to heal in that space. And there's just so much richness, and really all we need is the space.
Mm.
And I think generally our culture just doesn't take the space and time. We haven't grieved the things that we need to grieve. We haven't
Mm.
celebrated the things we need to
Yeah.
celebrate. There's a lot of denial, and it
Yeah.
stifles our growth. It keeps us as a society deeply
Yeah.
immature. And I
That's right.
think if we could make some space for those things, a lot would change.
I think about this a lot.
Mm,
What could happen if we were willing culturally to face the reckoning that is in order
That's
in
right.
our history, in
Yeah.
our in our structures, in our origin story,
Yeah.
in this story of white supremacy that just persists
Yeah.
decade.
Hmm.
It's never. It's
Yeah.
the through line from the beginning
Yeah.
to today.
That's right.
Um, the resistance to that work is clearly, obviously,
Yeah.
has proven to be almost impenetrable.
Yeah.
But what could it be on the other
Yeah.
side? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a vision. It's a vision worth fighting for. Do you
Hmm.
feel um what's your state of optimism toward toward a reckoning, toward grieving what needs to be grieved, as you said, celebrating what should have rightly been celebrated all along, saying the truth about what's true? How do you feel about our progress here from your vantage point?
Oh, I wanna be able to offer some optimism.
I want
I
you to
will.
tell the truth. Whatever
I
feels
will.
true to you.
Yeah, I don't feel very optimistic, especially not in the short term.
Yeah.
Um, I feel sad.
Mhm.
I was writing a couple days ago about how I feel like I'm letting hope go, and faith is stirring in me, but it feels like a faith that is so close to it's so close to the bone. It's like I have faith because I am breathing, because my heart is beating, because I know some people who I can hold hands with and love and struggle with. There's a faith that's born of that, just the
Mm.
reality of that. But I don't have a big hope. Um, because I think in a way, I obviously wrote a book and hope that it can
Yeah.
be an offering, but all the words have been said. I think that's why I talk about embodiment in a way that there's no more words that can be said. We can keep
Yeah.
talking, but there's not really any more words to say. There's something that has to happen. It has to take root in your belly. It has to be expressed through your actions. You have to change. And I think so many people think change is a good idea outside of them, you know,
Mm.
and don't actually want to be
Of
different.
course.
But if we persist in that way, yeah, I don't have much hope for us, but I have faith in the people
Mm.
who are really letting themselves be alive and changing and
Yeah.
know that we're related, you know,
Mm.
and that
Mm.
then therefore we're responsible for each other.
I want to talk about your book. You just mentioned it, What It Takes to Heal. Can you talk about it a little bit? What were you intending to set forth and write when you put it together? Because you have a lot of things to say and you have a lot of expertise in what it is
Mm.
that you do. And so, where did it focus in here? And what were you hoping that your readers would walk away with?
Yeah, I wrote the book kind of coming off of the summer of 2020 and all the
Mm.
uprisings that were happening.
God.
And, the noticing I had, kind of what we're talking about here of, there was all this energy, but it only went so far. And I
Mm.
think we got to a point where we're like, okay, what now? And even the things that were promised of, the money towards DEI, a lot of it didn't happen. Or now DEI, there's all these rollbacks. And
Right.
I certainly don't believe DEI is the answer per se, but even that got rolled back. And so I wrote this book to say, if we're really serious, or really to those who are really serious,
Mm.
it's kind of a note to those people who are really trying to live aligned with what they say.
Yeah.
They want to be in deep integrity. They're willing to change. I wrote this book for them because I think many people did wake up to something, did have intention, and maybe didn't know how, maybe didn't know what to do next. So
Mm.
this book was for all of those. Let us all kind of gather around the fire. People that want to change and don't know how, people that got stuck. And I wrote this book to kind of walk alongside people on that journey. I tell parts of my story
Mm.
in a way because I don't want people to feel like I've got it all figured out or I'm a better person or even an expert in some ways. I'm someone who's been asking these questions for a long time, that has been practicing a long time, and I'm offering from that place. But I don't want any, at this point, I'm like, don't read a book and from an expert and then you go, oh, that's really interesting stuff, but I can't do that because I'm,
Mm.
not good enough or
Sure.
whatever. I wanted you to read it and go, oh, I really feel that in my core. That shifted something in me. And this person writing somehow believes that I can do that too.
Mm.
And that's really what the book is about. It's saying there's deep things that need to happen. I don't know if we'll do it. I don't know if we'll figure it out. But I think these things in the book are part of the path.
Mm. Give us some examples. What are some things that you included? Because what it takes to heal is a pretty hefty promise.
I know.
Um, you went ahead and like reached for the brass ring up there.
Did. I did.
And I think that's the cry of a lot of people's heart,
Yeah.
who are just weary of suffering and would
Yeah.
love to know what it takes to heal.
Well, I think in part it takes us becoming more embodied. So that's a big part of the book. Um, we won't do it unless we become more embodied and more
Yeah.
congruent and more authentic. It also takes us visioning. My first chapter is about vision and imagination. I think we are kind of at the edge of our imaginations collectively. That's why they keep doing remakes of 80s movies and people keep
Mm,
remaking songs. We're at the edge
mm,
of our imagination and this configuration of the world. And
mm.
I offer the story in the book about Harriet Tubman who saw around the world that she was offered
Yeah.
and she saw another world. And I think that is a lot of the work that has to be done right now
Mhm.
is that we have to look through the cracks. We have to look around the edges. We have to look underneath the world that we have offered, the parameters that we've been offered, and say, I think something else is there. I think something else is possible, and feed that. So, vision and imagination is one part. I think another part that I just want to highlight in the book is relationship. You talked about isolation. We're an increasingly isolated society. And that is a threat to individuals and it's a threat to the collective because isolated people are dangerous to the collective. And a lot of our isolation is being exploited for other people's gain. Um, and I think we have to remember how to be relational with each other, how to really seek and stay in and be changed by relationship. And relationship is the building block of people power. The people's power to do anything is going to be contingent on our ability to stay in relationship with each other.
Mm,
Um, the last thing I
mm,
will say, maybe two quick other highlights is
mhm.
um, courage. I think courage is going to be huge in this moment, and the courage to also have conflict because things are going to fall apart,
That's right.
and it's not the end of the world. It's the end
That's right.
of the way that you were seeing the world.
That's right.
So in our interpersonal and our organizations, getting better at staying in conflict without
That's good.
dehumanizing each other.
That's a major deterrent for most adults.
Oh, I
A-
know.
An outrageous deterrent is just simply conflict avoidance. And it won't kill us. It won't.
No. It's often change avoidance. It's like
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm avoiding conflict because I don't want to hear something about myself, or
Sure.
I feel like I can't withstand it. And I
Hmm.
think that's the embodiment piece. It's like if you have a different concept of who you are, if you are seated
I
in
see.
yourself
Hmm.
differently, you might not perceive yourself as fragile as you see
That's
yourself
good.
now, and you might
Yeah.
be able to move through some of these challenges and
Yeah.
conflicts.
Yeah. There's that like thread
You know
right
what I'm
there.
saying? It's there.
Yeah.
It makes everything possible.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll just say, I write about love, which was really vulnerable for me, but
Mm.
I think it is the most transformative power we have available to us on Earth, and not in a flimsy way, not in a light
Yeah.
way,
That's right.
but in a real serious way. I think
Hmm.
love is incredibly powerful, and love will help us shift the power
Yeah.
so that more people in this world have power
That's
over
right.
their lives. I think we'll understand that. But I think that's a deeply important part too, is that things
That's right.
actually have to change. It's not just about us holding hands. There need to be more people making decisions over their own lives than there are now.
That's right. And I'm with you. I think that's a gritty love and a
Yeah.
tenacious love. It's a
Yeah.
love that is a true love of my neighbor,
Yeah.
and that
That's right.
my neighbor's well-being matters to me. And that
Absolutely.
just changes everything. It just changes how we vote. It changes
Yep.
how we live. It
Yep.
changes where we live. It
Yep.
changes who's in power, who is
Yep.
representative. It's not flimsy.
That's
In
right.
fact, it's not easy either. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
It's so big and broad, but in your book, you connect healing your body.
hmm
And we're on ramping to this conversation right now based on this last question, but you connect healing your body to healing culture, healing
hmm
society. Um, that these go together.
hmm
And so there's like this individual body, and then there's this healing in community, like in this collective, and then there's this greater world that we're all embedded in. And it's sort of, it's the breadcrumbs that lead all the way up. So I'd like to kind of talk about that final frontier as we just look broadly at our
hmm
world and what you see as possible.
Yeah, that's a huge question, but I'm gonna try to
Hmm.
answer it succinctly. Um, doing our healing work is necessary, not just because it makes us feel good, but because it breaks our addictions in the way to the things that make us feel bad.
Mm.
And when I look around the world right now, I mean, one of the things our cultures can be incredible places of resilience and beauty. Our cultures adapt. So if our conditions are harmful, we may adapt to include harmful aspects of culture,
Mm.
practices that don't actually feed life. So in general, I think we all have to look around at our cultures and say, do the practices that we engage in, do they feed life? Are they regenerative? Are they
Good question.
sustainable? Do they feed exploitation? Do they feed theft? Do they feed dehumanization? Do they feed strictly profit for certain groups of people? And I think a lot of us, if we took a hard look at the practices that we engage in, often we are feeding a beast that we don't want. We're feeding a beast that is going to come to get us, that is already coming to get other people. So I think
Yeah.
that there's
Yeah.
something to look at about our practices and say, okay, what practices do we need that nurture, that love, that encourage, that make us courageous? These are the practices that all of our cultures over time have had. We come together to dance when someone is born. We come together to dance when the seasons change. We come together when we have to go do a courageous act in the world. We sing a song to bless someone, feed life into our cultures. And I think that's something that's majorly missing. And I think one of the things that we end up doing when we're not processing our own stuff is that we give over our power to leaders who would manipulate our own stories, manipulate our own feeling for their
Yeah.
gain, with no concern actually for us. And we don't realize that our wounds are driving the decisions we're making. Our
Mhm.
wounds are driving how we listen to our leaders and what we think a leader even is.
That's good.
And I just think we have to do our work so we can recognize, so that we can discern, so that we can see, and so that we stop giving over our power to those that would rather exploit us and others, that ultimately, in that exploitation, move us all a little closer to death and collective death and pain. I think there's a way to move toward collective resilience, to move towards life and living
Yeah.
that I hope we find.
Me too. Me too. And I love your vision, and I love the pragmatic instruction to move into it. So
hmm
for someone listening who just feels like, I don't know how to grab onto this, I don't know how to hook
hmm
in,
hmm
there are ways. They're
Yeah.
very grounded. They're very
Yeah.
embodied. They're very of the earth.
Yeah.
Um, and in most cases, they're free.
Yeah,
Like,
get grounded. That's going to help
yeah,
us all.
literally walk your bare feet out to that grass.
If you get
Yes,
grounded, that's going to help all of us a little bit more.
that's
Get
right.
grounded, take action that is meaningful to you,
Yeah,
and that's enough.
yeah, that's good. Um, I have one last question that I ask everybody, but before I do
Yeah.
that, can you please tell my listeners where they can find you, where they can follow you? We've barely scratched the surface
Yeah.
here. There's
Yeah.
so much underneath this conversation that you have offered the world. So where can they find your work, your
Absolutely.
everything?
Yeah. So my book, What It Takes to Heal, is coming out soon, might be out by the time of the airing of this podcast. Um, my website, prentishempill.com, my Instagram at Prentis Hemphill. Those are great ways to find out what I'm doing. If you want to know more about our organization, the embodimentinstitute.org is a great way to get to see what we're up to and come join us in practice too.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hey, last question. I actually ask everybody this, every guest,
Yep.
every
Yep.
series. Answer this however you want, Prentice. Like you can be dumb, it can be earnest,
I tried to come up
however.
with an answer before, but I don't have one, so it's going to be fully
Okay,
off
let's
the
just see what
dome.
comes right out of the gate. Whatever's at the
Yeah.
surface. What's saving your life right now?
Friends,
Yeah,
um,
me too.
friendship. I've been under the weather again with a toddler and
Yes.
feeling so nervous about this book coming out. And
Mhm.
I had a friend called me this morning and spoke life into me,
Yeah,
encouraged me, and was like, anything you need,
yeah.
just, and I'm just learning so much about love through friendship. My friendships, my friends are saving me right now. I'm so grateful.
Oh, I love that answer.
Yeah.
My friends are among the greatest loves of my life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the realest sense, I cannot imagine this human experience without them.
Right?
So I actually love that answer. I'm so excited for you for this book to come out. I'm excited for your readers. I'm excited for you to experience this relationship because once you hand them your book,
Yeah.
it's theirs. Now
I
it's
know.
theirs.
I know.
So it's going to take
I'm
on its a whole
sweating.
new life.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's no joke.
I
It's
know.
no joke. But I want to thank you for the labor of it.
Thank
Your
you.
work is a chosen labor
Thank you.
and it's an emotional labor and it's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
And you work with people and inside communities who have a lot of trauma
Yeah.
to process and heal
Yeah.
from. And that is just hard work. And so
Yeah.
you could have chosen something easier and you didn't. So thank you for putting your hand to this particular plow.
Mm,
And I am so excited for your book to come out. I can't wait to put it in the hands of my community for sure. So,
thank you so much.
thanks for being on today. I was just so glad to meet you and so happy
Thank
to
you.
be in your little orbit,
Thank you.
and for teaching me.
I'm deeply grateful for the invitation and thank you for the support and just speaking life into me.
All right, you guys. Truly, we barely got started. So go over to jenhatmaker.com. By the way, this is a good, oh, let me just scratch that. Go over to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, and I'll have this whole episode for you in the show notes. And then I will link to Prentice's everything, socials, their new book, their other work, the Institute, all of it. If you would like to learn from Prentice, sit under their leadership, and see the kind of profound and powerful process that they're leading their community through. I love leaders like Prentice. So, all right, you guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing to the show. More to come. This hot summer of incredible episodes and so many new and exciting things around here. You're not going to want to miss any of it. So be sure to stay tuned in, and I'll see you next time.